Hello everybody and welcome to part 3 of what if Izuku Midoriya was the Avatar. The series where he got a quirk that allows him to control the 4 elements. This part will focus on the battle trial arc and yeah, that's about it. If you enjoy this episode and this series, don't forget to hit a like and subscribe if you're new. All that said, please enjoy the video. The first year students had only been at school for a day, but it was a very eventful one. One of their classmates had been expelled. The students still returned the next day, slightly on edge, fearing that the same could happen to them if they weren't careful. Mineta, right? What are you doing here? Ida asked, surprised to see him in the classroom. Yeah, weren't you expelled? Midoriya added, coming into the classroom along with Ida and Ochako. They had enjoyed a nice walk together after bumping into each other at the train station. Yeah, why are you here? Uraraka inquired, adding on to the perplexion of her friends. I was re-enrolled, Mineta explained, trying to act smug about it. However, his true feelings came to the forefront shortly after, as while he continued speaking, his expression was invaded by fear. Aizawa was so scary. He did all of this to teach me some morbid lesson about taking things seriously. He even said if I slacked off again, he'll actually expel me. The class was relieved that their classmate hadn't been expelled, but there was still a level of fear hanging in the atmosphere. Regardless of that fact, their lessons for the day went normally. After the first block of classes ended, the students went to the cafeteria to eat lunch. Izuku sat with both Ida and Ochako, enjoying a meal as he got to know his 2 new friends. After the lunch period ended, the students returned to their classroom and waited for the next period to start. While they waited, the students started casually talking amongst themselves, making small talk and getting to know each other. Suddenly, the door slid open and All Might came bursting into the room shouting, I am here! Coming in through the door like a hero! Holy crap, it's All Might! Kaminari commented, sort of freaking out. He's here! I can't believe he's really here! Izuku shouted, fanboying over his favorite hero. So he really is a teacher! This year's gonna be awesome! Kirishima stated. Hey look, he's wearing his Silver Age costume, Tsuyu pointed out. So retro, Ojiro added. Welcome to the most important class at UA High. Think of it as Heroing 101, All Might announced after taking center stage. Here you will learn the basics of being a pro and what it means to fight in the name of good and justice. Let's get into it. Today's lesson will pull no punches! He said while showing the class a sign that excited many of them. At the same time, it made some nervous. Fight training! Bakugo read, a huge grin forming on his face. This was what he came for, what he was good at. He would be the one to beat all the villains, and any experience he could get in this field would be invaluable. Combat training already? Izuku wondered. It seemed strange to him that they'd be tackling this subject so early on, but this was UA, the school where most great heroes came from. He wasn't going to be left behind. But one of the keys of being a hero is looking good, All Might stated, hitting a button. Shelves came out of the walls housing the hero costume cases. These were designed for you based on your quirk registration forms and the requests you sent in before school started, All Might informed. Seeing those, the class cheered. They were very excited to get to try their hero costumes on. Get yourselves suited up and meet me at Training Ground Beta. The students then headed to some changing rooms where they put on their costumes. 15 minutes later, they walked into Training Ground Beta ready for the exercise while All Might delivered an introductory monologue. Izuku came out of the gate to the area wearing a green suit that had some colorful highlights. The suit had a folded glider implemented into it in order to allow for some limited flights, along with a water pack in the back to allow for another combat aspect. This pack spread around the suit, acting as a stabilizing agent when in the air. Aside from that, he also wore a belt which contained first aid supplies. Hey Deku! Love the costume, it looks pretty cool! I really like the whole aesthetic, but what is that for? Uraraka asked, bringing attention to the folded cloth that was magnetically pinned to Izuku's chest. Oh, this? I can switch the mode with hand configurations and open up the glider, Izuku said, demonstrating in the process. It's meant to let me use my air manipulation to fly for a bit. Izuku then switched it back, with the glider's magnet switching from the wrist to the chest. Wow, that's so cool! I should have been more specific about what I wanted. This bodysuit is skin tight, not really my style, Uraraka said, complimenting Izuku on his costume while at the same time bringing herself down for her own choices. I think your costume looks great, Izuku responded, wanting to cheer his friend up. Before he could say anything else, All Might spoke up. Now that you're ready, it's time for combat training to start, All Might announced, forcibly bringing the small conversations the students were having to a close. Sir, this is the fake city from our entrance exam, Ida noted after noticing that fact. Does that mean we will be conducting urban battles again? Not quite, All Might answered. I'm going to move you 2 steps ahead. Most of the villain fights you see on the news take place outside. However, statistically speaking, run-ins with the most dastardly evildoers take place indoors. Think about it. Backroom deals, home invasions, secret underground layers. Truly intelligent villains stay hidden in the shadows. For this training exercise, you will be split into teams of good guys and bad guys and fight 2-on-2 indoor battles. Isn't this a little advanced, Ribbit? Tsuyu asked, bringing her concerns up with her teacher. The best training is what you get on the battlefield. But remember, you can't just punch a robot this time. You're dealing with actual people now, All Might said, being barraged by a bunch of questions. I wasn't finished talking, he responded. He got his students' attention, pulled out a piece of paper, and read the scenario's rules from it. Excuse me, Ida said, raising his hand once more. You mentioned that we'll be split into teams of 2 villains and 2 heroes. How do we decide who pairs with who and which team the villains are? By drawing lots, All Might answered energetically, pulling a small box up from the ground. Is that really the best way? Ida questioned. Think about it. Heroes often have to team up on the fly. This may just be a reflection of reality, Izuku reasoned. I see. Pardon my rudeness, Ida said after a moment of pondering the implications. No problem. Let's just get to it, All Might suggested, wanting to finish the class as quickly as possible. All students drew their lots. In the end, the matchups ended up being Midoriya and Uraraka against Bakugo and Ida, Todoroki and Shoji against Ojiro and Hagakure, Tokoyami and Asui against Kirishima and Zero, Kaminari and Jiro against Yaoyorozu and Mineta, and Aoyama and Ashido against Sato and Kota. Ready to lose, Deku? Bakugo asked in a confrontational fashion. I was about to ask you the same thing, Izuku responded, staring at Bakugo with a serious expression. Both students were capable fighters that wanted to test their mettle against each other, but the only time they had gotten to try it, the fight was cut short. All Might ordered the students who weren't partaking in the battle to the monitoring room. Once they were on their way, he guided the 4 students who were doing the exercise to their battlefield. Bad guys, you'll have 5 minutes to prepare. Then the heroes will be let loose and the battle will begin, All Might announced, the 4 students partaking in the exercise standing in front of him. After that was said, the 2 students playing the role of villains, Bakugo and Ida, entered the building, heading to where the weapon was, so they could start strategizing. In the meantime, the heroes, Uraraka and Midoriya, discussed their own strategies outside, reading the building's map. So, are you nervous? Uraraka asked after hearing that last exchange that he and Bakugo had had. He was mumbling to himself while looking over the maps, so it was a logical conclusion to make. Not really, Midoriya responded. Why would I be? Well, aside from the mumbling, I'd guess because of the ultimate rival vibe you and Bakugo have going on. It reminds me a lot of old shonen series, Uraraka responded, shifting her attention from the map she was going over to her teammate and friend. Oh, that. Well, no, I'm not nervous. It's a good chance to resolve a past conflict. We can finally see who's actually stronger, Midoriya said. What's this past conflict? Ochako inquired, curious about the situation. It sounded cryptic and exciting. It's not much. I'm referring to a fight we got into in middle school that ended up with us being suspended for 3 days, Midoriya clarified. Okay. What were you fighting about? Uraraka asked. It wasn't anything too important, Midoriya answered, not wanting to bring those memories back again or discuss it. Anyway, since our opponents are very skilled, we should probably discuss strategy. Bakugo will likely come after us alone while Ida defends the weapon. We should probably divide our forces ourselves. If we come into contact with Bakugo, I'll keep him busy until I can take him down. In the meantime, you search for the weapon. Sound good? Sounds good, Uraraka responded. But what happens if they both come after us, or they both stay at the weapon? If that happens, then we strategize in the moment and take them on together. We can likely combine your zero gravity and my elemental control in some interesting ways, Izuku said, showing his partner self smile. He then shifted attention back to the map, so we would at least know the basic layout of the building once the match started. Yeah, especially with Earth, Uraraka said, showing her partner thumbs up. Motivated by her partner's enthusiasm and rivalry with the enemy, she started studying the map herself. In the meantime, the villains came up with their own strategy, which turned out to be more or less what Midoriya predicted. The 5 minutes ended up passing and the exercise began. Once it did, the two heroes approached the building. Once they reached the door, Ochako tried to open it, only to find it locked. What are we going to do now? She asked. Do we look for an open window or something? I got an idea, Izuku said, approaching the door. He reached a hand to his bag and used his abilities to pull some water out of his costume. He then moved the water towards the keyhole, freezing it in place. He then pulled on the door hardly. A small crack was heard as the lock fell off. Wow! Way to go, Deku! Ochako enthused. Shh. I think we should try being stealthy about this, Izuku suggested, not wanting to scold his companion outright. Sorry, Uraraka responded, quickly putting her hands to her mouth to shut it closed. The two of them then walked through the building in search of the weapon. When approaching an intersection, Izuku stopped, causing Ochako to do the same. What's wrong? Ochako asked, looking at Izuku concerned. I don't know. Something just feels off, Izuku responded. Be ready in case anything happens. They both continued walking, and sure enough, as soon as they got close enough to the corner, Bakugo jumped out, preparing to throw an explosion at his two opponents. Izuku, being ready for this kind of thing, hit the ground with his foot while elevating both of his arms. Responding to his movements, the cement from the ground shot out, blocking Bakugo's attack. Izuku then punched the boulder, and it went flying at Bakugo. Seeing no way to destroy the thing, Bakugo instead enhanced his speed with his explosions and evaded it, rushing at Izuku with another attack. Uraraka, go! Izuku screamed while spinning around, pulling some water from his pack with each hand. He used one clump of water to block Bakugo's next explosion, hitting him with the second clump of water. Bakugo was thrown against the wall. Once he was touching it, Izuku froze the water. Uraraka saw her opportunity and started running. This isn't gonna stop me, Deku, Bakugo shouted, using an explosion to jump off the wall, breaking the ice. He again approached Izuku at high speeds. Izuku pulled out another piece of the ground to block, but Bakugo used his explosions to propel himself into the air, hitting Izuku from behind. Izuku reeled from the attack while Bakugo approached for another one. It isn't going to be that easy, Kachan, Izuku shouted. He saw little option, so he put his fists together, creating an air bubble that caught Bakugo off guard. He was thrown back slightly. Izuku got enough time to recuperate from the attack and unleashed multitude of air gusts at Bakugo, trying to keep him off balance. Once he had secured enough distance, Izuku emptied his water supplies. He assembled as much as he could, but some fell to the ground. He then shot it towards Bakugo, who blocked attack after attack. Izuku was just whipping him with the same water, driving him further into a corner. Once his back was against the wall, after relentless attacks on Izuku's part, Bakugo shot out an explosion. Izuku tried to block it using the water. He succeeded, but the water was scattered around, leaving a smokescreen and steam in its place. While Izuku reeled from the attack, Bakugo jumped out of the smoke, shooting another explosion. Izuku jumped forward, rolling on the ground to evade. He got up next to Bakugo, grabbing his wrist and throwing him to the ground. Once Bakugo hit the ground, he jumped back into the air, gaining a bit of distance from his opponent. "Damn it! How did you know?" Bakugo asked, stalling while recovering from the last hit. "You tend to throw a right hook with your explosions. Leaves you vulnerable for a bit longer," Izuku responded. Bakugo's gauntlets then gave a small orange glow, causing a surprised expression to appear in Izuku's face, even if just for a moment. "Finally!" Bakugo said, looking at his gauntlets. "Guess you're wondering what these are for, right? Too bad." Bakugo pulled the pin from his gauntlets, unleashing a gigantic explosion. Izuku, having quickly surmised what type of attack was coming, pulled a giant concrete slab from the ground to block the blast. The barrier that Izuku had erected crumbled in an instant as the explosion hit it. Luckily, the explosion had lost a lot of potency, and Izuku had been able to dodge most of it thanks to implementing his airbending to readjust the explosion's trajectory. "Ha! You actually managed to dodge that. Better than expected," Kachan taunted as Izuku struggled to his feet. "I doubt you'll survive another attack." "So, you're storing your sweat in those gauntlets and then using your stored up sweat to make a gigantic explosion. Is that right?" Izuku asked, breathing in and out to regain his strength. "Yeah, that's right. It's going to be your downfall, nerd," Bakugo said with a grin on his face. Izuku got into a fighting position. Bakugo charged at Izuku, wanting to take him down quickly while he could. In a flowy motion, Izuku moved his hands into the air, reacting to his abilities. Bakugo started floating, being brought into the air by his gauntlets. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted. "What are you doing, you damn nerd?" "Using the water from your gauntlets to incapacitate you," Izuku responded. He closed his eyes, concentrating. A moment later, Bakugo's gauntlets broke apart from the inside out. Small shards came out of the gauntlets, moving through the room. The thing maintaining him in the air gone, Bakugo started falling. Once he hit the ground, Izuku acted quickly. He manipulated the concrete around Bakugo to trap him. He even covered Bakugo's hands with moist rocks he had created when he dropped water on the floor before, so he wouldn't be able to create a proper spark. Looks like I win," Izuku said, exhausted and hurt from the battle. Izuku went over to a struggling Bakugo, pulled out the capture tape and wrapped it around Bakugo's exposed head, taking him out of the fight. Once he was taken out of the battle, Izuku freed him from the ground. "Damn it," Bakugo whispered, disappointed that he had lost to his rival. Izuku started walking, wanting to go assist Uraraka. As he walked, he started tilting to the right. The exhaustion and damage from the fight caught up with him, and he fell over unconscious. Uraraka spent the rest of the match trying to touch the weapon while Ida played keep away. Thanks to Ida running out the clock, the villains managed to win the match. The battle came to an end. Bakugo and Izuku were taken to the infirmary to get their injuries looked at and healed. They joined their class once they recuperated. After witnessing that battle, the other students were pumped for their own. The next to partake in the exercise were Todoroki and Shoji, who played the heroes, while Ojiro and Hagakure played the villains. This match went by quickly. Once it started, Shoji located their opponents and Todoroki froze over the whole building, stopping the villains in place. He then just walked towards the weapon and touched it, securing the win for the heroes. After them, it was Tokoyami and Asui's turn to be the heroes, while Kirishima and Zero played the villains. The heroes spent the first 5 minutes trying to find the weapon. Once they did, they ended up in a defensive battle against the villains. In the end, thanks to their long-range capabilities, the heroes won. Dark Shadow managed to touch the weapon while keeping Kirishima busy. After the most recent group received their feedback, and while the next group was still getting into positions, Izuku and Bakugo returned from the infirmary, having healed from their injuries. These two were sadly absent for the evaluation. I believe young Yaoyorozu covered all that needed to be said, so the floor is yours, All Might said, wanting to delegate the job. Yes, both Midoriya and Bakugo focused too much on their own personal grudges against one another and ignored the exercise as a whole. Bakugo at least managed to keep Midoriya distracted from the main event, but Midoriya should have kept an overview and helped his partner more. He focused too much on his opponent and let the fight slip him by. Yaoyorozu condensed, delivering only the core information from what she had said before. Then, it was Kaminari and Jiro's turn to play the heroes, fighting against the evil force that was Yaoyorozu and Mineta. These two had an easier time locating the weapon room, but had trouble accessing it, since Yaoyorozu and Mineta had combined their skills well enough to secure the room, getting them the win. The last match was between Aoyama and Ashido, who battled against Sato and Koda. It took the heroes a bit to find their opponents, but they managed to beat them once they did, thanks to their long-range attacks. Once everyone had gone through the exercise, All Might gave everyone some words of encouragement and left before the time limit could run out. The class over with, and the day coming to an end, the students returned home. And that's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and leave a comment telling me how much you like this video or whatever. You can tell me what you think is going to happen next and whatnot. The next episode is going to focus on the USJ, and yeah, all that said, hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye!